Today I am going to mount a watercolor painting on 140-pound paper to a aluminum panel. And I'm going to do that with some Holbein gel medium. I'm going to be honest, I've never done this before, so we're going to just see how it goes together. I got a Alumacomp aluminum panel. It has a kind of a buff side that it says things are supposed to stick to a little easier, and a shinier side for other applications. I'm going to be honest, this one has a very rough edge. I'm not super impressed with the quality of it. This is only the first one I've ordered, but I got two of them, and both of them have a very rough edge. They're not super polished, so if I was going to mount my work on this, I definitely couldn't do it as the finished panel. It would have to be behind something, because people would definitely get cut on this. But to get started, I'm going to take my watercolor painting and I'm going to just flip it over. And right under it, I just have some parchment paper. So I've got it upside down on that parchment paper. I'm going to take my soft gel medium. And there's regular gel medium and soft gel. And gel medium soft body. So the soft body is a little more liquid and I think a little bit easier to spread, where the regular gel medium is just a little bit thicker. So without having to water it down, which you could, I'm just going to use the soft body gel medium. So I'm going to put just a little bit on to the back of my painting. And I've got one of these nice little foam brushes that you can just throw away when you're done if you need to. But of course this is an acrylic medium, so you can wash it off if you want to. So again, still just trying this all out. I've played with them a few times, but I haven't actually mounted anything. So you just need a super thin coat of gel medium, but you want to make sure it's nice and even, and it's covering the entire surface, of course. And it does dry somewhat quickly, so you don't want to play around with it too much. Getting a little more on here. Make sure I have the whole thing coated, and then I'm going to let that dry and go ahead and coat my panel as well. So I have been told that the best way to do this is to put a thin coat on both things, let it dry, and then come back and put another coat on the dried layer, and then put them together. So I've got this all nice spread out and thin. I'm definitely not being super neat about it, so it's probably going to be on the other side a little bit of my painting. So obviously going to have to perfect how I'm doing this a little bit. Maybe put it down on a better paper to start. We'll have to play around with it and see. But here I'm just spreading my gel medium soft body on that slightly roughed up side of the aluminum panel that I got. Pretty easy to see where I'm putting it on there. And again, I'm just going to make sure that's super smooth. Because I don't want any bumps under my watercolor paper. If I was using 300-pound watercolor paper, it probably wouldn't be honestly as big of a deal because the paper would be so thick. But with 140, I just want to make sure that I don't have any bumps and lumps that will show under my painting. And then I'm just going to let that dry for a few minutes. So after a few minutes, the gel medium on my paper dried super quick. That only took a few minutes. It took a little bit longer to dry on the aluminum panel, so I did just speed that up a little bit with a hairdryer so that I wasn't just sitting and waiting, and that dried it up really quick. So now I'm putting a third coat onto my panel. Again, just another super thin coat. I have been told by the experts at Golden that this is the best way to do it, that if you put a coat down on each surface and let it dry, acrylic bonds well to acrylic. So by putting that third coat in the middle, it just gives you that nice, really good bond when you're mounting. So I have my third coat now spread out super nice and even and light. And I'm going to just flip my panel over and center it right on the back of my painting. I've already made sure that the borders of my painting, if I center this right in the middle of this page, that it will be perfectly centered for my painting. So I already know that that's set. I have an even amount around on all the edges. I'm just going to push it down a little bit, and then I'm going to flip my paper over, and I'm going to put just another piece of clean parchment paper down over the front of my painting, and then I'm going to brayer it to make sure that it has a nice solid bond. So I'm going to start from the center of the painting and brayer towards the edges, so that while I'm doing that, any air bubbles are moving their way out. You don't want to just go all back and forth. You want to make sure that you're moving the air bubbles in the right direction so that they're going right off that page. The parchment paper is just making sure that if I picked up anything on my brayer or anything like that, it's not going to get on the surface of my painting. And the parchment paper will not stick to the gel medium, so it's just something nice to have in between. So I've got this all brayered down. I think it's nice and solid. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip this parchment paper over. I'm going to turn my painting over like this, so you can see it's all nice and bound. I'm looking, making sure I don't have any water bubbles, any air bubbles in the middle there. So I can flip my painting over. I did make quite a mess of the back. So in the future, I'll have to think to leave that protective coating on my board that comes with it until I'm done, so that I don't mess up the back like that. And then I'm going to just put it down to make sure I don't have any junk on my table. I'll put it down on here, and I'll just put some weight on the back and leave that for a day or so that it can fully dry. Then I'll just take an X-Acto knife and trim off my edges, then work on the varnish. Thanks so much for joining me. Again, this time I used the Gel Medium Soft Body from Holbein, and I used the AlumaCorp or AlumaComp aluminum 8x10 archival painting and mounting panel. And again, these sides were pretty rough. I wasn't a super fan of that, but we'll see how it comes out in the end. So this is my first time doing this. I just wanted to see how it goes. I'll be trying a whole bunch of other things. If you've done this before and you have any tips for me, I would be super happy to hear them. Thanks for joining me.